All right, guys. Hi there. Hi. Okay, welcome to wherever you're tuning in from today, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, my YouTube channel, wherever you're looking from, welcome. This is a live stream that I'm doing, so welcome here. And if you're tuning in on the replay, then also I hope you get a lot of value from today. So I wanted to just step in today because I was on a coaching call with some of my group coaching students today, and one of them raised a very good point. She raised a fear of stepping out of her comfort zone. What we were training in was something that was completely new to her, and she was feeling very, very uncomfortable. So I thought I would get on here and just share a bit about this because I think it's something that can help a lot of people, and it's something that I think affects everybody. If you're learning something, then you're going to be at some point out of your comfort zone. So it's a lot of us. So if you're feeling out of your comfort zone right now, congratulations, because that means you are growing. It means you're doing something that's pushing yourself out of your boundaries, out of your normal modus operandi, and you're doing something that might be a little bit uncomfortable, but it's going to pay dividends in the long run. And I'm going to go through why here today. All right, so I've got some notes here just to, because I have a terrible memory, so I'm going to forget if I don't. So, how do you get over this? How do you feel the fear and do it anyway? How do you continue to progress forward even when you're feeling fear and you're completely out of your comfort zone? So I want to touch on that today, and I've got some points to raise. So first of all, what is your comfort zone? So let's just discuss that first. So your comfort zone is basically that place in your mind. That's a very, very key point, which I'm going to come back to later. It's that place in your mind where you feel safe, okay? And you feel that you're in control. Everything is familiar, so you feel comfortable, hence it's your comfort zone. So we all have a comfort zone, and depending on how much we develop ourselves, um, really determines how big our comfort zone is. So your comfort zone could start small, and as you develop, you'll get a bigger comfort zone. Then you'll try new things, and you'll get more comfortable in another space, and then you'll try new things, and you'll get more comfortable. So your comfort zone is always expanding as you learn more and as you become comfortable in that space of that new thing that you're doing. So I just want to give you some examples. I'll give you one example of sport that I came across a couple of years ago. I was doing this 30-day challenge, which was a HIIT challenge, HIIT, high intensity workout challenge, where it was on YouTube, and the challenge was every day to do the next video. And the idea is you would progress through and your fitness level would go up as you went through the videos. So I did this challenge and I did day one. It absolutely killed me. Carried on for day two, body absolutely aching. Carried on, got through some videos, and it got a bit easier as I went along. But it was still a challenge at each stage because each each video got harder. So it's always pushing you forward, right? And I got to day 21. I did day 21. And then when it came to day 22, I put the video on for 22, and I've started to do the exercise, right? And then I'm thinking, this is really easy. Why is it so easy? This is strange. And then I realized I'd actually put on video 2 instead of video 22. And I hadn't realized through those 22 days how far I'd actually progressed in the fitness, because it was so gradual, you don't kind of notice. But then, day 22, if I'd have started on day 22 at the beginning, that would have been completely out of my comfort zone, and I wouldn't have been able to finish the exercises probably. But because I started at the beginning and I slowly worked my way up, it became more comfortable for me. So I was pushing my comfort zone each time, but didn't realize how much I was progressing. So that's one thing to keep in mind as well, is that you are progressing in inches and inches, and you sometimes don't realize. Another thing about your comfort zone is, and I talked earlier about this thing of your comfort zone increasing as you progress, right? So I'll give you an example of how this worked for me when I started my business 20 years ago. I started working from home, and then I became so busy that I had to hire staff. So I had to get an office. In those days, you couldn't do remote working in those days. There wasn't the technology available. So I had to hire staff and get an office. Now, at that stage, the thought of getting an office and having to commit to paying regular rent every month was so absolutely terrifying for me. Absolutely terrifying. And it was $1,000 a month, Singapore dollars. Not a huge amount, but also it's a commitment, right? And it was about the standard for the size of office I was renting in those days. This was 20 years ago. So I started out with this office, and it just absolutely terrified me to take this up. And it was a major, major jump. I was completely out of my comfort zone. And I was worried sick that I wouldn't be able to find $1,000 every month to be able to pay the rent. But I'd have to pay the rent if I wanted to stay there. And so it also was the same with staff. When I got staff, I had to find the money to pay the staff. So this was all out of my comfort zone at the beginning. But then as you get used to that environment, that becomes the norm, and that then becomes your comfort zone. So I became comfortable with $1,000 rent and paying 2 staff salary a month, and knowing that I could get the income in to cover that. But when I very first started, I didn't believe that was the case, right? So I became comfortable with that situation. So my comfort zone had increased. And then the next step was to move to another office, and that rent was then 2,000. And as we moved office to office, the rent increased each time. So in the end, I was paying $4,000 a month for an office. And, again, same thing. When I very first took that office, there was the fear of, oh my God, this is quite a lot. Am I going to be able to manage it? Will I be able to commit? Again, it was slightly out of my comfort zone. And at that point as well, I had 10 staff. So it wasn't just 2 staff, it was 10 staff. I had to find the money for every month to pay those salaries. So I was looking at that point at kind of like $70,000 a month fixed overheads that I had to, so at the beginning of my business, when I basically just had to pay for myself, anything I earned was kind of a bonus, right? Then as I got the first office, that comfort zone expanded. I had to get comfortable with $1,000 plus a couple of staff. So I went from really just having to pay my own salary, just pay my own expenses basically every month, to suddenly, or not suddenly, but over time, having a $70,000 per month fixed expenses, running a business. And that became comfortable for me. Not completely comfortable, but it was still stressful. But it was something doable. I was doing it every month. I did it every month for years. So it became part of that comfort zone for me, that I realized it was possible and I could do it. But starting at the very beginning, you don't realize that. But then when you look back afterwards, you realize how far you've come. And I would kill for $1,000 rent, office rent now. Absolutely. I'd jump at that chance, but that's not going to happen. Not in today's world. So that's what basically want to say about your comfort zone is it's comfortable because you're not stretching yourself. But when you stretch yourself, your comfort zone gets bigger and more is possible. So always think about that. More is possible. Okay. So another thing is then, how do you cope with this when you're in that? It's all right saying, it's all well and good me saying, you can do it and it's going to get easier and things like that. But how do you actually manage at this particular stage where you are uncomfortable? Those feelings are real, but they're just feelings, but the feelings are real. So I would say, just ask yourself, what's the best and the worst that can happen? Paint yourself for your fear where you are. So just say, for example, your fear is getting on social media. and you've never done this before and it's completely foreign to you and you're putting yourself out there, and it's a big step, right? It's a huge step. So ask yourself, what's the best thing that can happen if you took that leap of faith and you actually did whatever it is you're going to do, whether you put your message out there and you put a call to action to get on a call with you. If you did that, what's the best thing that can happen? And if you did that, what's the worst thing that can happen? So if we take that scenario, if you put you put yourself out there and you do a call to action and you ask for people to DM you and book an appointment with you and let's have a chat kind of thing, what's the best thing that can happen? The best thing is you will get targeted clients asking for a call with you. That would be the absolute best scenario, right? They actually act on what you want them to do. All right. What's the worst? What's the worst? The worst is nobody's going to respond. Okay. Is that so bad? You haven't died, right? You haven't died. So we say, what's the worst that can happen? Okay, it might not work first time, but then you learn from it, which is a point I'm going to go on to next. But so if you always paint what's the best and what's the worst, usually you find, and you'll think of this through anything in your life, usually you'll find that the result is somewhere in the middle, probably more towards the best, but somewhere in the middle. And can you think of any time where it's actually ever been the worst, the absolute worst that could possibly happen? Can you ever think of that? It very rarely happens. We tend to torture ourselves and we tend to really paint the worst possible scenario, and it just doesn't, we torture ourselves through it, but it just doesn't come true. And I'll give you an example with me. Years ago, I decided that I wanted to be a coach. I wanted to do this, but selling my products and services, selling my courses, I thought, okay, I can do this through a landing page. There's no way I'm going to do it through a webinar. A webinar is too scary. There's too many things that can go wrong. It's all about tech. It's live. Absolutely no way I can do this. And no, just wouldn't consider it. But then after some time I was persuaded. I got a coach and the coach said, just go and do it and see what happens. And my worst case scenario was that the tech would fail and I'd have people live listening to me and I wouldn't be able to get my teaching across, and it would all fall flat and it would be a disaster. And actually what happened was kind of my worst case scenario, right? The tech did go wrong because I managed somehow to lock myself out of my own webinar halfway through. So I got a message from someone saying, you're not there anymore. And I'm like, what? Where am I? So I had to log back into the software. But when I logged back in, I remember feeling extremely calm. I wasn't panicked like I thought I would be. I was extremely calm. And I just went back in and everybody was still there waiting. And I just said, oops, sorry, don't know what happened there. I must have pressed the wrong button, whatever. We all had a laugh about it. And I just carried on. All right. So it kind of, my worst case scenario kind of happened, but it wasn't as bad as what I thought it would be. Yes, I locked myself out, but I came back in. Everything is workoutable, right? You can work it all out. I was on a webinar once with one guy who did a webinar and he was on quite a well-known webinar platform and it completely failed. It just, nothing worked on this thing. And so he sent a message to everyone and said, I'm going on Zoom. Here's the link. Come and join me on Zoom. And he just continued. He finished off the webinar on Zoom. So it wasn't a complete disaster. Yes, there was a gap. He probably would have lost a few people who didn't get the message. But basically, there's always something that you can do. So even if it goes wrong, it's usually never the end of the world. Okay. So always imagine this. If you're feeling uncomfortable, just imagine what's the best thing and what's the worst thing. I guarantee you the worst thing is not going to happen. It really won't. Okay. So another thing then, starting with baby steps and then building momentum. So you just want to test the waters, right? So do that first time. And I promise you the first time is going to be the worst, right? Because it can only improve from the first time. So do the first, look at what you did in the first, learn from your mistakes and build on from there. Okay. So, um, and when you take it in baby steps, you're going out of your comfort zone, but just a little bit. It's like when I talked about my office. I didn't go from having one staff to having 10 staff overnight. It was a gradual growth. Okay. I didn't go from paying 1,000 to 4,000 in rent overnight. It was a gradual growth. So take it in baby steps, take it one step at a time. So you get a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more comfortable. You get a little bit braver, a little bit braver. Things become normal and you stretch yourself again. The key is you've always got to be stretching yourself forward. So in a way, you've got to be comfortable being out of your comfort zone, or be comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's when you know you're growing. Okay. So start small and, just handle things from where you are and just build up. Okay. But the important thing is not to stop. So building momentum is important. You want to do that first step, but then you want to take the next and then the next and the next. Don't stop after the first, because you'll just end up back at square one. So you want to be building momentum and just improving and improving as you go through. So don't get into the mistake of doing it one time and thinking, yeah, I did it. Okay. And then not doing it again, because the next time you get to do it again, you'll be at square one. You'll still be thinking the fear. All right. But if you keep going at it, the more comfortable you get, after a time, that first step that you took will seem like nothing, just water off a duck's back. Right. Okay. And a little bit that I've alluded to here is embrace failure. All right. We hate to fail, right? We don't like this word failure. It seems negative. Nobody likes to do anything wrong. Nobody likes to admit failure. But when you think about it, really, the only way we truly learn is through our mistakes. Okay. If somebody tells you something, you're going to take a certain amount of that information in. If somebody shows you something, you'll take more in. If you actually do it, you'll take more in. If you make a mistake doing it, you will learn tons, right? And you'll make sure that you don't make that mistake again, hopefully. All right. So embracing failure is really important, that you look at everything positively. And if something does go wrong, like, okay, for my webinar, for example, I realized, when I locked myself out of my webinar, I had to then go and look at, okay, so I made a mistake. It wasn't the end of the world, but I don't want that to happen every webinar. So I realized that I had to go and look back at, what did I do in that webinar to lock myself out? So I had to make sure that I became more familiar with the back end of the webinar so that I would stay present in the webinar, right? So I had to embrace that failure and say, okay, what can I learn from this now? So you've always got to ask yourself that question. What can I learn so I can get better? So if you look at your failures just as like that golden ticket to getting better the next time, right, then you can only get better. So failure is a good thing. It helps you learn faster, and you will be a success faster as a result of failing. So fail fast and learn from it. Okay. And then, and I think that's the key thing, is always make sure you learn from it. Okay. And last thing about being out of your comfort zone is get community support. Get people around you that are supportive of you, that understand your journey that you're going on, that will support you when you're feeling down, when you're feeling nervous, when you're feeling scared, when you're feeling unsure of yourself. You've got that community to go to boost you up and make you realize, okay, I'm being silly with myself now. I shouldn't do that, right? So community is important, and that can be mentors that are going to help you to learn faster because they've done it. It will be a group of people that are doing the same thing as you. They're learning the same thing as you. So they're going through the same journey as you. Now, some of them will be a little ahead, and then you can learn from those people. Some of them will be a little bit behind, and you can teach those people what you know. And there's no better confidence booster, really, than being able to teach someone what you know. And then you realize, okay, you know it. And also, what I was saying before about, if you teach, you learn from your mistakes, but you also learn really fast. if you have to teach somebody else what you know, because then you have to make sure you know it, right? So that's really important, that you get that community support, that you're not on your own. It can be so easy to get into a negative downward spiral if you're on your own. So you want to find a community. If you're learning something, then it's probably the community that is learning the same thing as you. If you're building a business, maybe you want to find an entrepreneurship community of like-minded entrepreneurs that's the same thing. They've been through the same thing as you, or they're going through the same thing as you, and they can lift you up if they're just that little bit ahead. Okay. So lastly, I just want to touch on what I alluded to at the beginning of it's in your mind. It's in your mind. Everything, when you have a fear of something, it's your perspective on something. And the reason why you might have fear of doing something and not be in a comfort zone when somebody else doesn't have that fear and is completely in their comfort zone doing that thing, it comes down to perspective and believing that you can or you can't. And some of that comes with practice. Once you realize that you can through practice, you get to that comfort zone where you realize that you can. But you really need to understand that your comfort zone is in your mind. It's completely in your mind. It's not a physical thing. It's not a physical space. It's completely in your mind. So you've got to do what you can to develop your mindset so that your comfort zone can expand and grow. Okay. So looking at videos like this, learning from people that are a bit ahead in that mindset work ahead of you is a great way also to expand your comfort zone and make you be able to do something that you feel uncomfortable with, because you realize that you're going to go through that discomfort, and on the other side of it is going to be a short-term bit of comfort before you get to your next outside your comfort zone. As I said, it's a continual learning journey. It's always something that you'll be going through, and you've got to get used to, as an entrepreneur, being comfortable being uncomfortable, but embracing that discomfort, because you know that you are growing if you are feeling that discomfort. Okay. So remember, if you've liked what you've heard today, then do like, comment, share this video. I would love other people to be able to hear from, and learn from this as well. And if you're on my YouTube channel, then subscribe as well, so that when I do put up new learnings, then you get notification that it's there. All right. I've loved going through this with you today. I'd love to hear your comments. If you have any comments, it would be great to engage with you. Okay. Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye-bye.